So I got to do it. Got to do all
Fight
of
the
the
power.
checks. All of the checks.
All the checks. Well, I'm just going to have a little sip here. Thank you.
Have a sip, and then let me just do my little things, because we need to see if anybody can see us. That's the first thing.
Yes, sir.
Right. So while we do that, I have to do the test where I have to look and see if I can see us. I've got to do that.
Oh yeah, that's true. I could have. Do you know what my phone's there?
No, sorry, I got it. I can see.
You got it. Okay, wicked.
Some say I'm a fool to be abiding by rules. Listening so low since I've been going to school. Getting a vibe.
Yeah, yes, Stacey. Hello.
Listening about time, very good meditation. Play your time, don't love. Play your man.
We've got friends.
Yes, sir.
Time comes
Hi.
from love. Play your man.
Big tune, big tune, big tune, big tune, big tune.
Oh, it's my grandma.
Make it a long life, so come I
You're ready for the. You're ready. You're ready.
Oh my Lord, my. Oh, what fun that we got. The beginning really. They tell me when I play. It's gonna play. All that fun is past.
Thank you, South East London Air.
Without whom I could not be. So much is hard. Some are trying to leave out of their life, but some that won't be so unright. And so I promise to serve thee with all my heart. And I beg thee.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you. Okay, this is for you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you,
Okay, I'll do 60 more seconds and then we'll get into it. Emperor Selassie, I know it is a must.
Opening prayer.
Trust me. Hold your hands together. Hold your hands together.
Emperor Selassie, I know it is a must.
These are not too bad, I mean they get them flies in now. The rest of the trust, need for next name now. Them is fear of them hurt to be falling well. But let them fight stop love's alright.
You need to stop it because I'm not going to be able to concentrate. I want to just dance all day now.
Yo, them are mingle with them. And them parasite so love sound out for pride.
Right over us, Emperor Selassie, I dem your road, running and speed. I know it is a must. Right, well, as you know, I always say, nobody has tuned in to listen to me carry on like I'm in my house and we haven't got things to do, right? So, but I had to take this moment, right? You know, I had to take this moment because this has been a crazy, crazy day. So I'm ready for today. I know everybody's waiting. So, you know, my phone was like, ping, 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 ping. Shreen, have you seen the article? Have you seen it? Have you seen it? Have you read it? Like, there's no institutional. And so I had to post to say, yeah, I've seen it. Just let me read the report. Well, I did stop because there's only so many swear words you can fit into a sentence. So I just thought, I can't. So what I thought, before I even introduce you guys, just so everybody knows how we're going to do this, I know with all the love in the world, Leanne, if this was just me and you, we would spend an hour and 20 minutes cussing down the place.
Burning it down. MI5 coming, CIA coming, everyone coming.
Right. I'm not even lying. We would just, and you know what? Many people would tune in just to hear the cussing, because you know I'm good for a cuss. I'm ready, right?
However, I'm hyped.
However, so what I did was I got most of it out of my system a couple of hours ago, because I called Leanne and I basically cussed. You know, like my partner's like, "What's the matter with you?" I'm like, right? So I got most of it out. So what I did say, we can spend 10 minutes cussing. And the 10 minutes cussing is purely to allow everybody else to cuss at the same time, because I know everybody else want to cuss. And I do not want to deny anyone's voice in being able to cuss, because there are plenty of people that are cussing, right? So I thought we can spend 10 minutes cussing. And then what I did say, when I was like messaging, "Hi, Dean," and then, "Okay." Hi, is, in all seriousness, this is not new news, right? None of us are surprised. None of us are surprised. And I wanted us four, there's probably a few other people, like if logistics would work, that I would put, but I wanted people who were about this life, right? So I wanted to talk to people who are consistently on the Black liberation vibe, who are consistently not bowing down to trying to keep our voices silenced, right? So we're trying to mute ourselves and be what's the word? You know what I'm trying to say? Like trying to please everybody else, you know. So let's not take it too far, in inverted commas, right? So I wanted real people who I know I can have a real conversation with, and every single one of you I've had real conversations with. So that's why I wanted you here. But what we've got to have the conversation about, in my mind, and I will stand corrected by you three lovely guests here, is what are we willing to do? Right? Because you know I said this to you, Leanne. So I know we're going to upset some people in this conversation, because some people are thinking we're just going to spend an hour and whatever cussing down the government. No, I'm not. And I'm also not going to spend an hour and 20 minutes cussing down Tony Sewell either. I can spend 5 minutes. That's really simple. But the question is still, what are we willing to do to change this trajectory? Right, so that's like, you know, I always got to start with my soliloquy. That's it. That's Hamlet's soliloquy, Shireen's soliloquy. It's finished. That's it. You know, I play my tunes. I say my little soliloquy. So that's it. So I'm gonna hand over to you, lovely people. So I'm gonna go, Leanne. I'm gonna go you first, because you're in my corner, and then we'll go to Kay. Then we'll go to Dean. That way.
So, like you, I might not swear as much, but I read the report and I thought, the people who have co-signed this, wrote this, how was it even worth it? At what price were they really willing? What were they offered that they decided to not only ship every Black person down the Swanee, but also that they could still go to sleep at night knowing that they've denied everything we have been fighting for? And when I say everything that we have been fighting for, I'm not just talking about us. I'm talking about those of them who came over here in the Windrush generation. Those of them, like our parents, who went to school and were called the N-word. Those of them who still remember their parents not being able to be milkmen, not being able to do anything, and their parents doing the jobs that they did in order to send them to university, where they were still excluded. But now, because they've got a pass into a new world, they feel okay signing off on it. The fact that they have erased the validity using title, using academia, using prestige, giving the perfect conduit and excuse to every racist person to say, well, look, if these successful Black people say that all the reason why Black people aren't successful is because of themselves, it's their own fault that they're poor, and that's the reason why they're not getting ahead. If Black people are doing that to us, then as you said, the conversation has to be about what the rest of us are willing to do. Because those who are meant to be leaders within our community have decided to take a different journey. They've decided to pacify, to plead to banter to be the pet of people who want us to be quiet. So I'm handing over to Dean to go after that, because it just got me so vexed, so vexed.
I think Kay is next.
To be honest, I mean, thank you so much, Leanne, for even, gathering the emotion and the energy to really explore the depths of what you explored in such a short period of time. I don't think there's much else really to add. I mean, all those emotions that you just expressed were emotions that I felt instantly. And you know what's really sad, and I'm sure a lot of us are going to echo that, is I already knew that those emotions were going to be surfacing in with enough time in advance. Basically, it's like I already knew that come today, this kind of upheaval of emotional vitriol, all of this anger, this rage, this disheartenment, all of this would come to the fore for simple reasons, not because I didn't expect any different from a conservative government who are commissioning a report to pat themselves on the back. I knew that was ultimately going to be an outcome, but more the fact that, again, I'm not also surprised by this, but the fact that, the agent of delivery of this news is, again, just like what Leanne expressed there, this agent that then provides, I think another word that you use, which is perfect, is a conduit for those who already have this inherent belief in their mind of victimhood that we always put out of ourselves, that, oh my God, pity us, woe, all of us, and all of that stuff. It's being delivered by somebody who phenotypically is supposed to be somebody who they can point to and say, well, if he's saying that or they're saying that, then clearly the rest of you just need to pull yourselves by the bootstraps. And to me, that's the most hurtful part, because again, listening to him on LBC, just from an educated perspective of anyone that can just look at him trying to articulate something based in nothing was the most hilarious thing for me, to hear him try to speak about, the difference in attainment levels for, Black African kids versus, Caribbean kids, and denoting that racism cannot be the singular, common denominator there. If one group of that same race is thriving in one place, the basics of somebody who even is not on any sort of, I guess, higher academic standards should be able to deduce something from that, let alone somebody who claims to be a doctor and whatever it is that he is a doctor in. And again, just seeing how, again, as you said, that gives ammunition to lots of people and lots of institutions, which is, I think, for me, is the biggest thing. It's not the interpersonal, which this report highlights that there is that to a certain degree. It's the institutional stuff, the work that I would say was long overdue before last summer, but I'll say last summer actually kicked a lot of institutions' butt in terms of actually challenging them to really start to look into these structures, these systems, these pay gap disparities, all these things, this accessibility questions, especially education institutions looking at the disparities for particular demographics of Black kids. All of this, like, now this seems to be an opportunity that I believe could really, really put that work 10 steps back. Because we've already been pushing for it. And I say this summer, we kind of got a little bit more leverage to be able to go back and say, you know what, now we can see, nobody can actually argue that, the systems and structures are disproportionately impacting these groups in these said ways. And numerous reports have highlighted the same disproportionalities over and over again. But this, to me, the saddening part is just the fact that, again, it's delivered by somebody who looks like us and ultimately almost really does 10 times more of a disservice to what the information is in itself, because then that really just creates this, what we already know exists within our society in terms of respectability politics, this, Black exceptionalism, all these types of things is so much more, prevalent when it's delivered through somebody that's supposed to be, one of the affected groups, as it were.
Excellent analysis. So I'm in a slightly different place in that I extrapolated my emotion a long time ago, because it just doesn't mean anything. How I grew up anyway, I was quite numb to a lot of things. I came to this movement when I was 18. I joined Panther UK in 1993, May 7, 1993, because Stephen Lawrence was killed. And where I actually realized how this system worked is the Socialist Workers' Party created Black Panther UK to co-opt African, Caribbean, and Asian people, because it was only politically black, it wasn't African black, into the Socialist Workers' Party. So they created a vehicle, funded a newspaper, which I used to write for at 18. And then it came to a question of self-defense. And there was a split in the organization. And all of the Asians in the organization went on the side of not wanting self-defense. And the large majority of my African Caribbean comrades came onto the other side and wanted self-defense. So as naive as I was at 19 at the time when the split came, and we actually were made abundantly aware that the Socialist Workers' Party had set the organization up, funded it, we used to print the newspaper at their headquarters. I asked the question, you couldn't protect me on the Saturday, May 8, 1993, in the Welling March, because I got hit in the eye by police with a truncheon as a baptism of fire on my initiation. So if you can't protect me, we must need self-defense. And they were adamantly opposed. So it started to teach me about the system, how we are played, how we don't see the bigger picture thinking, and how we fit in as pawns. So at this stage, 30 years later, I have a clarity that is at an institutional level, and that we can't be encumbered by emotion anymore, because Boris Johnson's first term is Trump's first term. And we're supposed to be doing what our African American cousins should have been doing at that time, which is to completely extrapolate our energies from the race industry, which this is just a big distraction. And when we look at campaigns like Kill the Bill, look at the timing. We're all distracted by this little piece of nothing. It's toilet paper. Don't worry about that. Park that for a second. Let's put a pin in that. It's to make us emotive. Now, there's a bill that is seeking to take away all of our human and inalienable rights to freedom. Now, if you can't congregate to have a peaceful observation, which they wanted to make an example out of those English roses who were defiant, nothing about conflicting orders is true. It's all false. And as much as the wolf investigated itself on that report is as much as the wolf investigated itself on this report. So let's just understand that they are the tactics of warfare, and it's all fair because it's warfare. It's a game, but it's not child's play. So we've got to be aware of the game that we're playing. So I have now come to the space where, being on a more metaphysical journey in my own life, I'm looking at how they're utilizing our metaphysical energy against us. In that, if you remember the movie Monsters, Inc., they would collect the screens of children to fill the bathrooms. And that's exactly what they're doing with us. So here we go. This is Labour. This is Conservative. Left hand, right hand. You go far right, you've got Socialist. Far left, you've got Socialist Workers' Party, Labour. You go far right, today is EDL, and then you have Conservative Party. None so diametrically opposed. You could get a sheet of paper between them. This is about the state of it. What they do with us in the middle, and let's just describe us as 1/3 is absolutely for our politics, which is self-determination and recognizing us as an ethnicity and really wanting to go after initiatives like Black Pound Day. 1/3 is diametrically opposed, like David Lammy. You are Black English, not even Black British anymore. We've improved, although for our ethnicity, I'm not sure if we can be English. And then you have 1/3 who are in between. You just go with the wind. What the role of the bodies to do, and this is where the metaphysical component comes in. Shake us up. This is just energy now. Rubbing of the hands, the two sides. And when you separate, there's a vacuum, which is energy. We are in between that energy. And then whatever we react to, they just do this. It's Tai Chi. No resistance whatsoever, just calm energy. But they're playing at the level of a Tai Chi master because we don't have the bigger picture thinking. Like me at 19, I'm only seeing Panther UK. I wasn't seeing that the Socialist Workers' Party had set it up. So I didn't even understand what the bigger picture was. Now, if the bigger picture in the United Kingdom, the US, and all countries globally influenced by China, who own more of the world, after the IMF, they own most of the world's debt. So when you see the totalitarian measures being adopted by governments, and if we were to conclude that the virus would bring about the measures to bring a vaccine, and it were that way around, it wouldn't seem so unusual. Because when you go into that problem, solution, problem, reaction, solution, we are now all reacting, and we put celebrities there because it's palatable, and our rights need to be restricted, just like in 9/11. You have a big event that is too hard for most of us to comprehend because it would create a conflict in our minds where we just couldn't cope. So we choose for what we go for, what we know. We trust our government. They are there to protect us. They would never seek to restrict our inalienable rights because this is a democracy. It just goes to how naive we are. And all they're doing is Tai Chi. No, if African Caribbeans are opposed, we have funding for African Caribbeans who are actors, because when you say cut, the movie ends. So it's just a played role. So we all fall into line. I don't want to go too far into this, but when we are looking at a bigger picture that involves us potentially losing our human rights, there's always some distraction, because remember, as cultural leaders, what do? We set the tone. So we're all reacting to this, but there's a bigger bill, and we will be the biggest victims of that bill. If you see policemen who will punch their English roles, kneel on them and handcuff them, when it comes to men like me and Kay, our lives are actually at risk. So we've now got to be pragmatists in how we look at the ground. And if we imagine ourselves in the first term of Trump, we must get behind an institution that is going to create cohesion across the organizations. So at an institutional level, just like the royal family with their damage control released a letter for and on behalf of the family to the government, to the British public, we need to be able to do that. The Worldwide Council of Jewry can do that. The Islamic councils can do that. And if you look to any other ethnicities, Greeks, whoever, they have that body that can do that. We don't know whether to poop or go blind, and we're looking everywhere. And because we have no cohesion, we have no funding, we're not self-sustaining.
You can't do that, Dean.
We don't have it.
You can't do that.
So we're going to figure it out. But the key, and I will say this in closing, is to understand the purpose of characters like Tony Sewell. And I'm going to preface it with this. I'm going to give you an acronym. Tony Sewell, Kemi Badenoch, Trevor Phillips, Sean Bailey, and people of this ilk, to give you the acronym, creatures of opposing nuances, because we don't use the term anymore, it's unkind. But I'm going to say something to you. My humanity now observes them as fellow Africans and says, they didn't start out this way. But we don't socially or economically reward our advocates and our champions. And I'll tell you myself, Malcolm X was my greatest teacher, but 6 months after closing my business, he's taught me to be isolated and broke. So we do not reward our advocates or our champions. But I tell you who does. White supremacy rewards them with titles, positions, and geld, coin. So I'm not so hard in that way. I understand the environment that creates them, and we know we've got to create a layer of leadership. When we're all clear, now we must align around a vehicle that can go against their tide and carry us in our own sovereign direction. And we no longer have the option, the luxury to procrastinate, to argue, or to get into any of the hyperbole about who is who and what is what.
Right. So can I say, because Dean, I always know you about to like hit. I always feel with Dean, like, you know, when Dean talks, you're just like soaking in all of this. You're like, yeah, oh my God, yeah. Like, yeah.
And then you remember that you're meant to talk afterwards, and you're like, but
Right.
okay.
Always, because I'm like this, but my face is like this. My face is like this. Boom.
And then he just drops in poop or go blind, and you're like, but
yeah. So listen. So Dean, where you finished is going back to where I started with all of this, right? Because on one hand, like, listen, and I'm talking to all of you fabulous people that are listening. I know who are like, because there's lots of people messaged me, right, and gone, oh my goodness. But this is my thing. Like, you don't have to worry that I'm crying in a corner, right? You don't have to worry that I am fragile because of this, because I was never surprised by this. Right? Is it? I just find it hilarious that we can hear the police sirens going off in the background. They're coming for us already. They're coming. I wasn't surprised by any of this, right? But I still maintain, once I got through, like, so my partner printed off the report. I told him, why bother? Like, just complete waste of paper, right? Why bother? You know, we don't need to talk. We don't need to hear on page like 45 or wherever it is, where they've basically said we're not going to focus on the disproportionate impact on ethnic minorities, because we believe that we're going to focus on everybody, and we also feel like poor white boys need more help, and we also, right? So I'm not going to get into that, because I can pull apart every single thing on every single page that was written to just and the bit where my emotion came into this. Right, so where my emotion did come into this is kind of what you were saying, Leanne, which is this point about how dare you be so fucking disrespectful, right? About all of the atrocities that have been committed in the name of perpetuating a system that continues to produce favourable outcomes for people who do not look like us. Right? So how dare you? That's where my emotion came from. So it wasn't about, you know, this whole thing instituted, right? Like, whatever, like, because, you know, they're always, listen, Boris Johnson stood up and said, I don't believe the UK is racist. So I'm not being funny, but what did anyone think the report was going to say any different? He already stood up and said that, and he's caught on film. Like, we didn't pay any attention to that, because we're, oh yeah. So then everyone was like, let's put our hope. So I want to talk about why we keep putting our hope into Conservatives or Labours, whoever, to Dean's point. It's like much of a muchness, slice of paper in between. Why are we looking external,
right,
to rectify, to fix, to improve all of these things? I go back to my question, and you know, I said this, Leanne, and I've said this a number of times. What are we willing to do then?
Right.
And that question is an individual question. That's not a blame, that's not a judgment thing. But what I'm saying is, to Dean's point and to what Kay was saying, we can't use all of our energy on a document that's 258 pages, I think it is, or something ridiculous.
Yeah, of nothingness.
Of nothingness, right? And as Dean said, why are we not questioning why our civil rights are practically being eroded before our very eyes, all on glorious high definition, and we ain't doing shit, right? So I know that's a slightly off question, but to Dean's point about the distraction, so we've got that going on. What does that report, in its existence or in its not existence, what does this change when we already know the reality that we all live in, right? So I go back to, and this is why I didn't want to get into, like, everyone's like, oh, can you give me, can we talk about, like, no, I'm not being disrespectful, but like, no, because my thing is, that's not going to solve anything, because I tell you why. There are thousands of those reports in the UK that talk about parity between ethnic minorities, between Black people, between Asian people, between, you know, the impacts of xenophobia, race hate, between how Jewish people are treated, Islamophobia. We are drowning in paper.
Right.
We are drowning in data. So does it matter that one more? Yeah, I know the point about the institutions. It's not about that. But all I'm saying is the energy that we put in ripping apart this rather than going back to Kay's point to go, what does reports like this not allow to happen?
Right.
That's the question we should be asking.
Right.
And I go back to, therefore, what are we prepared to do? Right. That's just my little, that's my little something. Before
I say something to your point, I just wanted to go back to what Dean said about this mechanism of distraction. And there's a book that I read years ago, and it's by an Italian guy called Roberto Saviano, and it's called 000. And the foundation of it is that while everybody was talking about crises, global crises, it was drug money that funded the world, right?
Yeah.
And he basically broke down the concept that we have in the West of creating good entities and bad entities, when the reality is that you can only smuggle millions of kilos of drugs unless you have a government backing you to do it. You can only buy weaponry for terrorism if you have a government that allows you to do it. So going back to the bigger picture is we have to stop looking at governments as being our saviors, as being the institution that's going to do right fundamentally, i.e. this party's got to do it better, because these governments have their fingers in all the pies. But the one thing that they all have as a commonality is Black people are not allowed to come forward.
It doesn't matter who you are.
Right. So it's like we need to kind of stop looking at this thing of, oh yeah, there's good, there's bad, there's this, there's that.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter, because it's a system. The system is not built around good or bad. The system is built to keep producing the same outcomes. And guess what? This system that we are all part of, or complicit in our silence. Dean, you've said this before, I know 100 times, and I keep saying to people this before, it doesn't need the Trumps or the Tony Sewells or the Boris Johnsons of the world to keep on ticking. What it needs is for us to do nothing or get distracted by pieces of paper. That's what it needs to keep ticking.
Absolutely.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying to you? That's what it needs to keep ticking. Right? And it's one of the best man-made systems we have ever invented. Because by definition, it is so hard to challenge against institutions, because we get distracted by this. And these are tools for conditioning to stop this. Because basically what it's saying is, all you people, whether you're Black Lives Matter, whether you're, there's all sorts of people like coming together, all you people that's talking about racism, well, if we as the institutional government tell you that there's no such thing, you better fall back in line.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody else that was thinking of supporting you, you too better fall back in line, because what we're saying to you is you don't get government backing. You get government backing if you want funding to go and set up a little community centre over here. You get government backing if you want a therapist. But let me tell you, we are not touching our systems, right? We are not touching our criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
We're not touching our health system. We are not touching our economic system and how employment legislation is still in the favour of the employer, not the individuals, whoever you are. Mm-hmm. We're not touching that, because we don't believe institutional racism exists. For us to touch that, we have to publicly acknowledge our institutions are at fault. And we will never do that, because it means to disrupt the power structures.
Mm-hmm.
And racism, it is a power structure. There is no emotion to it. It's in a power structure.
Right.
110%. Did you want to say anything, Kay?
No, I mean, I think for me, going back to the question, what are we prepared to do? And I think, again, linking into what Dean highlighted around the fact that this is a distraction tactic, which, look at every revolution that was, disbanded or quelled over time. Distraction was a very, very big part of the successes of the destructions of such revolution. And again, something so monumental as to kill the bill, which is something that's over the last, I guess, couple of weeks has been gathering the most kind of wind behind it. It's no coincidence that this is dropping at this point in time, and knowing us as an emotional people, that being a very big sort of bank that they have in terms of, well, we can get them emotionally charged about nothing, so that we can kind of divert some energy, divert some person power away from this movement. But what's super, pertinent in this discussion for me is thinking about on the ground level. And I think, Leanne mentioned a fantastic point, that why as a people do we still think the government is there to do anything that yields positive outcomes for people that look like us. Mm-hmm. But the problem and the fear around that is the fact is, I walk into classrooms with 13-year-old Black boys, and they have a feeling that they are as valuable as Tom over there. Mm-hmm. Should also be getting the same kind of things that Tom gets over there. And that young person has every investment in a system and a society that's supposed to educate them equally to the highest standard, to give them equal amounts of opportunity to the highest standard as the next kid. Stepping out of school into the household, their living conditions, their council estates, they expect the same levels of services by the council. They expect the same conditions as a young kid who I work with, who goes to a school in Hackney. His mother went to deliver his soon to be youngest brother, and she didn't come home from childbirth. That young person has an invested expectation in the system. So for us as adults and seeing the way the world is played out, yes, we can know that the government is not there to get the legislation, policies, infrastructural changes that make a different outcome for our thriving. But that young kid living in a society that is coexisting with a variety of different ethnic groups, they have every investment in a system that should have every desire to allow for them to thrive. And that's, to me, the biggest hurt in this, because I go into those structures, I go into those systems with the worldview that I have, which is mirrored by what Leanne and Dean is saying, and Shireen, but understanding that it also is a vested, not even interest, a vested motivation in me to try and fight for something that yields a better outcome for that child, because that system, albeit knowingly, is not designed to provide or produce an outcome that's favorable for that child's thriving. But I still have the motivation in me to empower that child to, one, understand what they should expect from a society that is supposed to be based upon equity and equality, but also to not stop in their quest to fight for that. And that's where, again, looking at today, a particular incident of people power, of young people, students in a school, who, again, in light of what was very prevalent in that school, not just today, for a while, of a lot of the racist policies that are implemented in that school, people power, again, the revolution of this generation, to sit out, to take no for an answer, to say this is not something we're going to stand for. That's power. And that's, again, to Dean's point about the kill the bill, that's what they don't want us to do. They don't want us to be able to galvanize people, mobilize people to resist what we know should be what the society, the government should be putting in place for all of us to thrive. They know that if all of us are able to be mobilized and to activate, there is no chance on earth that they can continually put these things in place. And that's what they're really trying to destroy. And that's why we need to oversee what this slight distraction is, to carry on the mobility on the ground, to carry on the grassroots works that we're doing, to carry on putting pressure on the institutions that we have access to, and all the people who claim they're allies, to understand that this requires an extra battery in your backpack, to not be distracted by this, to continually carry this work on the ground, to be able to bring the optimism of a better future for those young people who deserve that. I mean, we all deserve that, but more so the young people who coexist in a society that boasts post-racial equality. They believe that in their mind. And that's where dissonance is, because they believe that holistically. But to see things that do not point in that direction is something that I think I'm motivated to make sure that my last breath is to really try and push for those types of continual mobility and mobilization of young people and people that are on the ground to definitely make that work come to reality.
So can I just say, Kate, just before Dean, I know because I know you're about to take us back to church because you know every time I've got to learn stuff. I've got no notebook. I'll just watch and replay. That's how I do. That's how I learn. I'm
not laughing. You have to.
Right. That's how we learn. So that's how we learn. But what I will say, there is a reason why. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right. There's a reason why there's 4 of us here on this screen. Right. You've got Leanne, who's like pushing for Black women in the workplace. Yeah. Kay, you are pushing for young people, young Black boys in particular, right, who are vilified by society before they've even, right? And Dean, you've got you who's trying to connect advocates with community grassroots, with allies in organizations with this. And you've got me, the noisy person that's just
listen, no. Do it properly. No. Do it properly.
You're doing it better than me, much more effectively.
But let's make her do it properly. No. Do it properly. What are you doing?
So my job is to also try and improve the lives of our Black colleagues, full stop, right, in their organization. That's why I do this. You know, because I have the privilege of being able to say things that they can't say. Right? I have the privilege of having very, very senior people actually pay attention for all my honesty and the raw truth that I give. So that's my contribution. I did a live a couple of weeks ago. I'm talking now to my fabulous friends who might be watching with Will and Gregory, right? So I don't know if you remember this, I did with Will and Gregory, and Will in particular, so they're the co-founders of a company called True Spot, but Will in particular shared the story of his dad being 13, dragging this 7-foot cotton sack up and down. Right?
Good show.
And Will, because you know I never forget this, so I still like talk to Will and Greg. So we're still trying to like secretly trying to help them behind the scenes with some stuff. But when Will's dad said to him, and this is what I'm saying to everybody else now, to kind of I'm going on top of Kay's point here. When are we going to check back in? Right? Because we can choose to be distracted, be upset, be hurt, be all of the emotions. I'm not taking away from the emotions. That's not what I'm doing. But what I'm saying is, at what point do we find our moments? Like Dean found his at 18 because of the death of Stephen Lawrence. I found mine because I saw Amy Cooper and her foolishness in Central Park. That's what got me here, right? Hey, you will have your equivalent, Leanne, you will have your equivalent. We will all have our equivalent day ones, as you know, I refer to it. That's what we got to do to check in. But we owe it, in my mind, I believe that we owe it, that if we have the energy and, to Kay's point, the motivation, that we have to be able to see the bigger picture, but we also have to think about what are we prepared to sacrifice then? Because I can tell you all 4 of us in very, very different ways have had to sacrifice some level of safety, some level of comfort. It might be financial. It might be social in terms of acceptance. Because let me also be crystal clear, right? For everybody's now who's, we're talking about, the death of and the trial of George Floyd because of his death and, all the rest of it. We've got this stuff going on. Let's also be crystal clear. The last few months have been very quiet.
Tumbleweed.
Right? So and again, I'm not saying judgment, but what I'm saying is, therefore, when are you going to check back in? We cannot keep jumping into the arena only when we feel like there's a fire in the stands. This is the fire in the stands. We can't keep doing that, because when we keep doing that, we are not helping the Ks of this world. We are not helping the Deans of this world. So when I have people, very well-meaning people, say to me, I want to make a difference, okay? and I'm just using this as an example, so I'm not criticizing, I'm using this example. I want to make a difference, right? And you're telling me you want to make a difference, and you're a C-suite individual. So you're a director of a company, a very established company. If you tell me that you want to make a difference, let me tell you what's not making a difference in the grand scheme of things. Putting in an internship for 2 Black people. And I'll tell you why that's not making a difference. I'll tell you why that is. Because in the scheme of your influence, the rooms that you have access to, the people that you have in your network, the people that you can whisper in ears, the funding that you are able to get because you can pay for Christmas parties when we used to be able to do that. But what I challenge is, and I challenge by saying, what are you prepared to sacrifice if you truly want to check in and support? This is not a skin color thing. I'm going to be crystal clear with this. It's got nothing to do with the traditional things. It's not a skin color thing. What I'm saying is we all have mechanisms, things in our arsenal that can be used to help continue the momentum of Kay's motivation, of your motivation, Leanne, of Dean's motivation. We struggle as Black people, back to Dean's earlier point, we don't support advocates. We only support advocates when there's a fire in the stands of the arena. We don't support the advocates when they're still there every day, coming to the pitch when there's nobody there.
Right.
So this is why I'm not getting into the little bits and pieces of this report. I'm not going to give my time and energy, because guess what? It means I can't do what I need to do to make sure there are employees in organizations who right now are processing this report and thinking, what does it mean for me? Because my company already can't even talk about racial equity. My company doesn't even want to acknowledge that there are disparities. That's what I need to be thinking about. That's what I need to be focused on. So if you're going to come to me, help me focus on that. Help me be more effective there. Help Kay be more effective with his young Black boys. Help Leanne be more effective to advance Black women. Help Dean be more effective to go and connect and bring together. That is what we need to check back in.
But for everybody, and this is, as you said, it's not a skin color thing, but this is also about, for every moment if you don't show up consistently, you relegate this to a movement.
Yeah.
So this is what everyone has to remember. It's fine if you're only there when you feel like you've got to extinguish a fire. You've relegated it to a moment, not even a movement, a moment. The house is done burning. The house is burning down.
There's no point coming with your little cup of Ribena to go, I'm here to put out the fire. It ain't gonna work.
Right. What we all have to do is we all have to bring big ass hoses and hose down the house non-stop until the embers are only there. But for every time you think it's somebody else's job, or you don't have any energy, or you're too tired, remember that there are 4 people here who don't get to be tired. And it's not to say this is a pity party, but what it's trying to say is that consistency, everybody of every color who claims to be an ally, who wants to be an ally, you cannot relegate this to a moment. You have to keep digging, looking further, trying to find things out. Because for the moment you think things are quiet, what did they say? The eye of the storm, right? So when it feels quiet, we all know trouble's coming. So the question is, are you prepared?
I'm telling you right now.
So are you prepared? Are you actually proactively prepared, ready to do what it is? Do you have a strategy? Do you know what it is? Because it's all great saying, I want to help, but to do what? What's your goal? Without a goal, you're still as aimless as anybody else.
Yeah. And unfortunately, because I know, Dean, I'm going to come to you right now, and like I say this with all the best love in the world, and I'm saying this partly because I love how this report also said that the rise of overt racism is due to social media and Twitter. Sod off. I do want. However, what I will say, but what I will say is we can't confuse captions on a social media post with action. Because I go back to this point about what are you willing to sacrifice to speak up, to use your influence, to support, to, do whatever. What are you willing to do? Who are you, when you're doing your charitable donations, where's your money going? This is not skin color, right? When you're volunteering, where's your time going? And I remember saying to Leanne a few months ago. This was like ages ago, like before I became vice chair of the Black Business Association. And I said to Leanne, listen, I'm very ashamed to say that if I reflect back, my civic duty has been strong. So I've been volunteering for years. Like it's been a consistent thing. So this is not brand new to me, right? But tell me one thing that I did that was for an organization that supported my people. I can't tell you. Like I'm embarrassed and I'm ashamed to say. I did, you know what, Leanne, I said to you, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So basically what I did to ease my conscience, I donated to Dean's organization. I was like, right, Dean, here's a check.
Yes. God bless you.
Right, Dean, here's a check.
Listen, Dean, you are the Dean is a perfect way to ease all of our conscience. Look, I volunteer too. Like I'm volunteering all my time. It's fine. Like, listen, right.
No, but because it's true. And what I say is that when you intentionally reflect, so what does it mean to check back in? That also meant I had to look at where I potentially missed opportunities to be supporting the Ks, the Deans, the announcers. There's lots of us for replicated in the States, in South Africa. Like we're all over the shop. Trust me, we are all over the shop, you know? And so I had to reflect on what I had to do differently, because I too can't sit in my chair here and go, well, what are you? I gotta go, what am I doing? And how effective with all, you know, all of the knowledge that I have. And people always confuse with impact. It doesn't always have to be about how much money that you have. You know, Leanne, you know this. I did a webinar to teach global majority women, Black and minoritized women, on how to ask for a pay rise and understanding the game. That's what I took, because that's knowledge that I have.
Right.
There's many people who work in organizations who have knowledge, and I'm not talking about, you know, state secrets, intellectual property. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the things that we're taught as our profession, right? That can help unlock and keep the Ks motivated and the Leannes motivated and connect the dots. Because let me tell you something, for anybody who's looking at all the stuff that we do and it's like, oh my God, it's great what you do. It is not easy out here in these streets. Let me tell you something.
Right. Can I just say one thing, a really important point? Just sorry, Dean, and sorry, Kay.
Not at all.
There's a really, I don't know where I read it. I can't remember. I was reading an article about how we need to re-socialize the view of sacrifice. And because this is the other point, when we talk about what do you have to give up, sacrifice to achieve a greater good is intrinsic in the way we live. So if you want to buy that car, if you want to buy that house, you go and save for it. If you want to lose weight, you reduce your calories. If you want to, I did say lose weight. If you want to, look at these, like, if you want to get that promotion, you go and study, which means you can't go spend time with your friend. If you want to do anything, it is implicit that there is sacrifice. The question you always have to ask yourself is, what I'm giving up worth what I get back in return? So when anyone's talking about it, don't ask yourself, there's going to be something you're going to have to give up, but remember the goal, remember the prize, because the prize of impact it's a multiplier. It's not about, someone said to me last week, it's not about you owning impact. It's about you passing it on and multiplying it. So don't look at it as, oh, well, if I do that, I'm not going to be able to. You do it for everything else you want to do. You work 12 hours to get the promotion. You listen to your boss talk about rubbish.
We already do it.
You go play golf and you don't even know how to play the game just to get ahead. It's all these things we do. It's all the things we do to make sure we can get to a point. So we have to absolutely have the same thing. If you really want to make a change and support Black people, you have to also be prepared to give up something, but it's not a bad thing. So I have a baby in the corner. I'm going to go on mute now.
There's so many excellent points, and we should have clarity about the metaphysical aspect, which is why I bring it. And it sounds strange when we talk about esoteric knowledge, but there is knowledge that is known, that is very old, very practiced, and duplicated in all societies to maintain control. So if I were to say they are practicing magic, you say, Dean's a space cadet, the cheese is slidden off the toast, and you now need to commit him because he's made far too much sacrifice. But do you know what magic is? Magic is merely the ability to shift consciousness from where it was to where you desire it to be. K is an alchemist. He has taken young men's images, and where they are stripping away our humanity, in one fell swoop, he's just come back and delivered the humanity of teenage African and African Caribbean boys. That's part of a wider campaign that we should all adopt and contact him to utilize his artwork to place the humanity back in us. That's not their job. That's our job. Now we are practicing metaphysics of shifting consciousness through perception. So as we start to play the game of Tai Chi, we know that because we are controlling our own image and our own narrative, now we are setting the tail. The reason they can say that there is an institutional racism is because they know that English people have zero empathy with us based on their xenophobia. But I'm going to give you an example, very recent, highlighted example of institutional racism that for English people, to make it palatable, is institutional inequality between your unmelanated backside and our melanated backsides. So when the Conservative Party actually decided to execute the hostile environment under Amber Rudd, here's what they did. They destroyed the residency records of legal British citizens. Here is why it's institutional racism, because all of these agencies collaborated under a well-formed plan. And what they did was they put their policy into practice. Now, we don't believe we can put our policy into practice, but we absolutely can when we connect the dots of our organizations, which are our institutions. So let me just go through the list of their institutions that collaborated to kidnap us and exile us, whilst asset stripping us. So the Home Office instructed to destroy the residency records. Then they collaborated with the Immigration Service, law enforcement, the Department for Work and Pensions, banks, and the local authority, who all collectively created a hostile environment for us. But when did they do it? And this is when I talk about metaphysics. On the 70th anniversary of the Windrush generation arriving en masse. So they started coming in 1948 and they finished around 1971. But what should have been our celebration, which was a call to action of African Caribbeans by invitation to rebuild a totally broken Britain, which we did on the underground, in the NHS, in the civil service, and all the jobs English people didn't want to do, just like they do.
Right.
So they saw the downfall in services after all the Europeans left, because they thought it was going to be a color-free show. But with 40-inch TVs, it's not going back to black and white. We're here again. So that is what institutional racism is. It is that joined up collective thinking of the institutions based on a government policy. So be under no misapprehension when the government decide that police work to enforce their policy rather than the protection of the people from criminal acts. We are going to slide into a police state, which is a totalitarian state, and then we have problems because we're at the bottom of every measurable metric, including, apart from the police brutality statistically, and apart from stops and searches of our children and men. Now that will go out into all of our people, because then they have questionable grounds on every level, because we will cease to have inalienable rights. And although I know I'm a sovereign under God and have freedom of movement, expression, and all the rest, me articulating it isn't going to help my backside, because I know what truncheons feel like. I don't know what lasers feel like, and I have no desire to find out. So when we go to sacrifice, I have been broken into by the security services, who will go as far as psychologically to leave you a little message to give you that feeling of being followed, and I don't have that. My psychological makeup, you can't figure out people like us with Psychology 101 because of our life experience. I come from a high danger environment where to go home, where we lived with my grandparents, wasn't where my friends were from Peckham. So just to go home was a hostile environment. It doesn't work for me. I know it's not going to be that bad. And I would have a video insecurity if you ever decided to drop me out, which just wouldn't be advantageous. Because my heart is fantastic. I haven't had a sick day in 20 years, nor have I had a prescription drug, nor will I be taking my vitamins as celebrities are recommending at this point in time. So we have to have clarity about their ability to shift our consciousness at a whim based on their resources. What do we invest in more of? The vehicle to distribute amongst all of the key delivery partners. K, public relations and imagery. That is a very important component in humanizing us off the back of 200-year campaign looking at Britain in terms of the transatlantic slave trade, because they had to dehumanize us to sanitize it and call it a slave trade, which it wasn't. It was human trafficking.
Yes.
It was female rape,
Yeah.
male rape,
Yeah.
and child rape.
Yeah.
It was torture.
Yeah.
It was people, it was the selling of people. So when you actually look at that and what it was so brutal. Now, if we were to compare that to the Jewish Holocaust of 12 years, and we're talking about 250 years, there is no comparison. The African Holocaust was the worst atrocity committed on earth. You cannot contest me because you have publications and a media factory. With no doubt, and I will say that King Leopold's atrocities, the Germans in Namibia, far worse.
Yes.
So we're not getting it. And if we want to say that we shouldn't be recompensed for reparations because all of the principals have passed who committed it and who received it, in the Jewish Holocaust, all of those who committed it are gone, and all of those who it happened to are gone. But the beneficiaries of reparations who are alive are being recompensed for the atrocity, as should we. So when we look at an Esther Costa Soze, who has now made exceptional progress with the reparations movement in Bristol, we universally come behind that. When we have the Halo project that is protecting our hair that we have in common in the workplace and in education, we universally get behind that. Now, we identify those organizations across the board. We connect each other digitally under our own platform. We can write a letter from a chair who is a national chair who just coordinates all of this activity amongst directors that go across economics, education, employment, health, housing, politics, media, trade and industry, which we are doing with the continent to become the first delivery partner of the continent, so we can replace our European and Chinese brethren. And then in what? Ghana has no import or export duty because they've replaced Europe in the trade agreement. So £400 a month is a middle class income. You can go and set up an IT company, train in AI, create partnerships between universities here and there, and do huge business and then export everything back to England with no duty. We are in an amazing position without knowing who we are, what we have. And I think the last 5 years I've taken over building 7,500 African LinkedIn colleagues since we're on the platform has given me an exceptional eye-opener into what our caliber is at the highest echelons of every industry. So I don't share our concerns, but it is 5 to 12. So we do need to get our backsides into formation. Now, if I had Beyonce behind me to once and say it, we all might put something in the pot, but I don't. It's just little old me.
And me.
Thousands watching. The three of you and the thousands watching. So we really do. We're at 5 to 12. And let me just say this. If the African Holocaust was the worst atrocity known to humanity, and they revoke our human rights, do you not think that could happen to us here today, tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to leave that thought in everybody's minds. Now, I demonstrated what institutional racism looks like when you have the interconnectivity of all agencies. Let us have all agency interconnectivity going across every area of life, where our highest echelons of thinkers, change makers, artists, business people, advocates, and professionals collaborate, not because we like each other, but institutionally. So when they start playing Tai Chi, we are now playing Tai Chi. Because I tell you this much, in the game of Tai Chi, no Tai Chi master wins. You just go back and forth. That's the game, old boy. We just smile, and we know it's all fair in war, and we utilize our tactics, and they employ theirs, and we just go back and forth. But at the moment, we're just taking blows because we're not institutionally organized, and it is required at 5 to 12.
Oh.
Powerful.
Dean,
Very.
I don't even know what to say. Right. We've been an hour and 5 minutes. Kay, is there anything else you want to add? I'm gonna play some tunes and I'm gonna show some comments because like all sorts. Listen, I can't even. But the thing is, I so liked the optic of the four of us. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like on
balance as well.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Total.
How often, you know, and this is, you know, before I even say to the comments, I just want to say, because like Dean and I had a WhatsApp exchange, because Dean has to remind me every so often that, Shireen, you don't have to wait to be invited on anybody's platform because you got your own. Honestly, I do. Like, it's so true. And I was like, that's so true. Like, so, you know, we can have this because in all honesty, like Good Morning Britain could invite all four of us on. The second we start talking 5 minutes into the conversation, the camera's gone dead.
Oh, sorry. But do you know something? Do you know what I love about this conversation? And this is not me doing any sort of gassing up, but it's bringing everything together, the history, the bigger picture, the impact, the humanization, what it looks like in real life. How do we go forward? How do we build strategy? How do we heighten our awareness? And this is the kind of conversations we need to have. And almost, Shireen, I feel like we could call this the Black boardroom, because this is exactly how it works in a boardroom. You sit down and you say, look, what is the outcome that we're looking for over a 3 to 5 year investment cycle? Okay, let's work backwards. What do we need to do? How do we do this? How do we do that? So it's that part about everybody needs to almost in your own circle create your own boardroom, and it doesn't have to literally be black, but what it has to be is your own boardroom that holds you accountable, that you then realize that it's not the point to stagnate, but this is, you know, I say this to Shireen all the time when we have conversations, it's about steel sharpening steel, right? You come together, you bring another angle, you look at it, you check that person. You said you were going to do this, but have you done it? Right. Leanne, have you signed up to give some hours to Dean? Yeah, I do now. Right. You know, like it's those sorts of things that we have to get into the routine of doing. People have, you know, round tables, they have their board meetings, and we have to take that same level of accountability on ourselves to say, do you know what? Even if it's once every 2 months, let's just sit down. Let's sit down, talk. Let's talk about not what we're doing in day-to-day business, but what we bring
to the table that's going to hit this 3-5 year plan. That's the only thing we need to be talking about. That's the only thing. Because, and that's the it's the accountability, because it goes back to that question of what are we willing to do? Well, that's what we're willing to do then.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't have anything really else to add. I just feel really honored and humbled to have been part of this incredibly perfectly curated, you know, group of amazing thinkers who, again, I mean, that again highlights, just like Shireen mentioned, about, you know, questions to myself to be better and do better in terms of actually learning more about the incredible work that both of you do on your independent platforms, and to really just, you know, empowered by and emboldened by what Dean spoke about this collective institutional interconnectedness, which I think is one of the biggest rooms for improvement within our community in terms of what we lack. Because we are not devoid of incredible thinkers, incredible artists, incredible business people, incredible all of the possible, jobs or whatever it is that exist on our planet, but it's just the interconnected piece, and that's where I think that is the biggest call to action that I'm taking away from today in terms of how much more can we completely interconnect and just understanding even though on so many layers and so many levels we know theoretically about what systems are and how they actually activate, but to really hear Dean outline it in such very clear fashion about how all these particular elements of the society come together to enact a particular policy initiative from the systems perspective is something that emboldens me to really work even much harder on really trying to make sure that we can create these systems to really bring about some of the real changes that we're talking about, where we don't then are at the whims of those who again hold the power and will that against and over us, which then limits what we are able to do and achieve. And I think outside of this conversation, I would definitely be having further conversations with all of us that are on this platform about how we can actually bring action to all the things that we're spoken about today. Because for me, that's what a lot of times leaves me paralyzed, because we have a lot of these, incredible, amazing discussions and ideas and this utopian, thinking, but then, it all dissipates into the air after everybody. Exactly. I think what is imperative is that, all of this thinking, all of these energies, all this motivation that we all have is really kind of funneled in such an incredibly structured way that allows us to definitely be authors and owners of our own movements and narratives and platforms that really enable us to enact change completely I guess devoid of all these external white supremacist mediums and powers that also obviously keep us at bay because of their agendas and ideas. So thank you guys so much for really providing me the opportunity to learn from you guys and to just be empowered and emboldened in a time where there's potential distraction in the air for that we're hoping to achieve.
We're just going to focus, and I think there's one important thing, because everyone knows that I didn't wake up like this, right? So I didn't wake up like this. It took me a while to get here. So I am very, very aware of plenty of Black people who are going to be, and my other global majority brothers and sisters, actually, who are going to be listening to this, right, and still struggling with this idea about, I want to do so much more to support my community, my communities, plural. But what if it looks like I'm against white people? Because I'm just going to throw that, because I know the thought processes. I know you have to you be whispering in my ears, you be telling me this, right? And I guess all I can say to you is two things on that. Is one, you have to remember that you even having that thought process is due to how well-oiled the machine of white supremacy is. And that machine of white supremacy is such that it makes it look like it's a bad thing to support people who look like you.
Yeah,
right? Because we got to call it as it is, because we don't really talk about this enough.
110%.
It's a real thing. Not everybody is going to be like, yeah, because I get this, right? So you got to understand, you're not on your own with that one. There are plenty of people who can talk to that. I talk to it every so often, all the time. I've been there, right? So, and remember, the objective, one of the objectives of the system works so well, is that it can condition us to do nothing without actually having to physically put us in a cage. Right. So that's the first thing I want you to remember. And number two is, if you listen to this and re-listen to this conversation that the four of us have had, we did not center whiteness in this. We centered ourselves. We centered the issues of the Black community. Those who know me, I don't need to say I'm not anti-white. I stopped saying that like 6 months. I don't need to say that because they already know.
Right.
So practice makes perfect. So one, you got to understand that thinking, that thought process is because of the system. So you got to understand that you got to work. It's everyday work. It's not overnight. I promise you. But secondly, it is not anti-white to dismantle racism. It is not anti-white to support your Black brothers and sisters in their fight to go and advance racial equity for us and the generation coming up behind us. It is not anti-white to use your voice and speak out on things that aren't right. And it is not anti-white to want to put your time and energy in causes, in initiatives, in programs that are specifically created to advance the progress of Black people. So I just want to be like because I know, I get it. I know, like been there, done that, got T-shirt, all the rest of it, and it's important, but it's a process. So therefore, it goes back to you might have to sacrifice the acceptance of some white people who will perceive your actions as being anti-white. But back to Leanne's point, you can either focus on what you're losing or focus on what you're gaining.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know? So I just feel like it's because we can't make these assumptions like this is real life. And I know what life is like for some, working in some organizations where it feels like, because if everyone's ignoring you and not talking about this, and you become one person that's doing stuff like that, that's got a whole different psychological thing.
You're baked.
Right.
You're baked.
And it's also that thing about, I mean, you and I, Shireen, we talked about this before. We have to, and it's not easy, by the way, but we have to get past this thing of trying to prove our value. It's there.
Definitely.
We just have to start to lock in to see our value, which is very different. And it's only once we start to train ourselves, and to your point, Shireen, it is all practice, because once we start to train ourselves to see our value, you start to move differently, and the moving differently brings discomfort. It brings discomfort to you. It brings discomfort to, somebody said to me recently, I've noticed that you've become a bit of an activist on LinkedIn. I was like, no, I'm not an activist on LinkedIn. It's for the first time. I've always been unapologetically Black, but this is the point now where I'm unafraid to publicly walk in my Blackness in a professional arena.
Absolutely.
Right.
And like you said, Shireen, that takes time, but that's also where we have to recognize and see our value. And in seeing our own value, being able to recognize it in others. Because to your point, we don't all have to, this is a nice group that we all like each other, but we don't all have to like each other to do business. We don't have to, because the business world isn't about it's about how do we come together to leverage our power to make 1 + 1 = 3.
Multipliers. That's my term these days, multipliers. That's all I'm interested in.
Yes. I would have one request of the collective, in that knowing our own traumatic journey, that we all have more compassion for each other's position. I did say, and I'm going to shoot the acronym again, creatures of opposing nuances, and we know what it is. And I think they've arrived there by circumstance as well. When we're more compassionate and we can actually break it down, as angry as we are, and we are angry, to put it in context, Palestinians hang their collaborators from lampposts. We just complain and we get to talking behind people's back, and we're so fragmented anyway. There are sometimes very powerful entities who can work together, who just won't, because there's so much history. Think about a Jay-Z and a Dame Dash. As geniuses they are in their respective states, as damaged as they are as men, and I'm a highly flawed man, they are vastly more valuable together than they are apart. So you'll have someone who works from a grassroots level like Dane, who just wants the independence. Then you have someone who understands the corporate sphere and how to move. And I say this about the wealthy. Their job isn't to make all the noise and go and risk their careers and their incomes, is to support those that do. So that when it comes time that they're attacked, they have that galvanized support behind them. If we have more compassion from the beginning, and it's not easy, you got to extrapolate yourself, because I've done it. I'm the worst, and I've gone at people like a bull. And I've taken the last 6 months to really have self-reflection in my spirit animal as a turtle. I put my head inside the shell and I listen to the God voice, and I make one step of incremental progress on a daily basis. But I recognize in my own hubris, in my own ignorance, what I was like. I was a monster. I'm running around the building butt naked. And as we realize that about ourselves, we can start to track it back. And that is the journey of healing. That's the ultimate reparation, the spiritual and psychological reparations.
Right.
We want the money too. And if we don't have the spiritual and economic component, we can't get the money.
It's money,
right. Not upon me, sir. Not upon me. But yes, 100%. 100%. Right.
It's true. Oh my gosh.
Right, let me show you some comments.
Show some comments.
Let me go see what we got. I don't know what's been going on here, so let me see what we got going on here.
All I know is that on Instagram tomorrow, you're going to see, they don't know if they're going to put or go blind. That's going to be my post. Thanks, Steve.
So we try to play the song about them that I'm ulterior motive. Oh, what a shame. So I try to play the song about them that I'm ulterior motive. Personal gain.
Sorry, part of this message is gone off.
Personal gain. And so I try to paint the stone about him that an ulterior motive. Oh, what a shame. Sorry for my God.
My God, that's you. If you jump out a frying pan.
Then I come treat him like what you do. Yeah. I wonder what this passion coming through. I want what I got to see it too. Cause I am diamond, they are missing so long I go to.
I don't know.
And so much time to pay the stone about it, that's an ulterior motive.
Love that.
Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. It's too, you know when you type essays, can't see it. Sorry. Can't see it. Oh, thank you, Magic Linting Liz. I don't know who you are, but thank you.
True.
Absolutely
true. When you say that in jest, a lot of times that you just come here to make noise, but you know, way more powerful than
powerful noise.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Sound frequency is a weapon.
Absolutely.
It is.
You see, the words are bullets and the minds are the target, and you're making an impact because you're making an impact where most activists haven't so far, in that you have the ears of allies who are now also drawing a line in the sand about their role. They understand it's demonstrable because remember, they're in the rooms that we're not having, privy to conversations that we're not. So when you can come out and smile at us and say, it's okay, oh boy, it's business as usual, they're aware.
Right.
And you're having conversations with them.
And that makes it, And that's the real impact, because that's the game changer. Because it's taking, Shireen takes the concept of it being a distant thing. It happens to those people over there, and you make it into a very real, sorry to third person you while you're here, but she makes it into a very real proposition that they not only understand, but it's something that they hear it in their own consciousness. So it's not only white noise in the background, no pun intended, but it's something that they actively hear. So when someone's saying it, you know, we all know you have a moment and you hear Shireen's mouth in your voice, in your brain, you're like, okay, fine, I get it. I'm not going to do that. You roll your eyes, you understand? But that's the power and the impact, because they now know, hold on, you know what, I'm sitting in this room, there is no black person at the table, we're discussing things that impact the black community, and everyone's going, yes, that's fine, great job, old boy. And then they're going, hold on, but have you guys thought about this? And everyone's like, hold on, where's this guy coming from? So they experience this. It's not the discomfort to the same level as us, but you take them on the journey, and that right there is power. That is powerful.
Thank you.
And I'll say one more thing about what you've done, Shireen. You've exposed Nasty Nick. Do you remember the first Big Brother?
Yeah.
Oh yes, I remember. How can you ever forget
remember in this
Nasty Nick?
isolation what he used to do with all these little separate conversations? When you
I
connect the
brought it
dots,
front and center.
there's no hiding place.
Right.
You exposing Nasty Nick now, and everybody's saying, "I that him myself."
But the whole time he was skin and teeth with you, and everyone thought, this is my cook. I've even been to his house, you know. I thought, but really, when he's with his friends, he's talking about this and that, right?
Clarity.
Clarity. And you know, and that's one of the things that I have to say that I've held tight to. So I have stopped pretty much having what I call side conversations. And what I mean by side conversations is that people will say things to me privately, like our own people.
Yeah.
Will say things to me privately, but would never do it here. So with all due respect, like, I don't knock your hustle, but you're not on my wavelength. That I go back to. That's why I wanted you for. And if Sace was around, I don't know where Sace is. I don't know what he's doing. I messaged him. I don't. God knows what Sace is up to these days. He's another one burning down the place all over the shop. But he's another real one. Every day, another real one. And so, because to do this, we got to be 360.
Right.
Because the second we're not 360, right, that's when the dissension comes in, and that's when it's another form of distraction. So I'm not doing that no more. Like, that was 2020. I'm not doing that anymore. So if you can't deal here, then I can't make my time for you there, because then I can't make my time for people who are happy to deal here.
Right. Because essentially for me, I just imagine it like, if you think about us, the four of us standing back to back, that is the 360 view. You can't have it alone. But if four people are looking at each side, if you've got north, east, south, and west, that means from whatever direction, you can see what's coming. And you whisper to your man on the left, and you whisper to your man on the right, and you say, hey, what's going on? Did you see this? I thought of this. I saw this. I read this. And this is also the power of sharing information. And this is why we have to start to come to this point about realizing that people say knowledge is power, but knowledge is only power if you know how to use it. So you have to start sharing it. I don't know all the things about education law, but if I see something come my way, I know where I'm going to send it to say, have you seen this? Right. And this is how together we become stronger, because this is the unit of business. This is the unit of state politics, and this is the unit of power. And that's how it works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to have to get myself another drink now. Oh.
I mean, you know what I said about bringing the Ribena to the fire later? About Ribena. What's up Ribena going to do? Go away.
George.
Now I'm just going to show this comment for about 5 minutes because she's got the same name as me. Hi, Shireen.
You're such a jerk.
Wait a minute. Oh, thank you, mysterious person. Thank you, thank you.
That's right.
Thank you, Isabel.
Mm-hmm.
That was powerful.
Here we go.
I think the system's cracked. Good morning, someone. Long time don't have reach out. Sorry, I'm just gonna go off now. Good morning, someone. Long time don't have reach out.
Student come and dance, so we learn from the teacher. So love is that you are the teacher.
Right, well, I think, listen, I could just play this for like 20 minutes. And somebody
We know.
I mean, you never need to did it.
You know what? I think the comments just stopped
I love this
loading.
compilation. It's like, I've been listening to it for like years and years and years and years, every time. Oh, Dave. Trouble. Right, so I think we're finished. I
Yes.
think we're going to finish.
Any call to action from anybody before we go?
I was going to ask that, actually. I was going to ask that. So, sorry, look, I've got to sort out this sound system. Leanne, call to action. What do you want?
Sorry, I've just realised that the comments have stopped loading. So that I'm looking at
No,
them
it's
now.
fine. It'll be there on. Don't worry. I think we crash it every so often. It's too many, can't go. So it'll crash.
Listen. My call to action is this. Everyone needs to still think about how they want to make their impact, and even if it's just going home and figuring out who needs to be in your own personal boardroom, go and do it. Build your group of people that help you not feel so aimless. Don't make you, so that you no longer feel so rudderless. Just go and find a way to do whatever it is you can, but find other people to bring you on the journey, so that the sacrifice doesn't feel so big, but you see it together. You go on the journey together. You have this. That's my call to action.
Okay, but I'm gonna before we move around, I'm gonna say, what is your call to action to help Leanne Mair continue to make the impact that you need to make? Yours for you. What is your call to action? What do you need?
What do I need? Okay, well, do you know what? I'm gonna have to pass up to Kai, because what do I know? I'm gonna have to think 2 seconds. Go.
All right, okay, I'm coming to you. What do you need? We spent an hour and a half giving to everybody else, is the point that I'm making. What do you need to enable you to keep doing the work that you need to do, which makes the impact that you want to make?
2 things. The first thing is I need access to more Black boys across London in schools. So speaking of access, I mean senior leaders who value the kinds of public health driven project that is specifically designed to improve the outcomes of young Black boys from an autonomous perspective, but also from a structural perspective. So those types of leaders who are invested in seeing a change in the disproportionalities, that they completely understand the complicity of themselves in creating that outcome, are willing to bring a project like the Smiling Boys Project into that space and commit holistically to looking at their structures and their systems, as well as providing the opportunity for the young boys to thrive over the 8-week period. Those types of people that are interested in me coming into their school to do that work, I need those types of people to get in touch and to bring me into the school. And then alongside that, I need young Black men who are interested in also learning the methodology of the project, are interested in also being offered an opportunity to work alongside. Because again, in terms of capacity, I am the only deliverer of the project, with that has a cap, obviously, and I'm
right
to definitely scale that up to really build in some incredible young Black men who are interested in throwing themselves into this holistically, because it's not about I guess CV on paper. It's about those who are invested in this cause, those who are doing this work within themselves as well, and open to creating a non-hierarchical pedagogy in terms of the ways in which they actually engage with young people from a knowledge sharing base. I think that's what I'm. So yeah, those are the two things. I need people who are invested in bringing this types of change into this education institution, but also I'm interested in Black men who are interested in also coming on the team to being part of the process to bring this change to young people, but also to themselves and to the society at large. So two calls to action, I guess.
Wicked. Because what I will do, I'm going to call, because I'm just warning Dean and Leanne, because you get practice when you get time to think. I will clip these specific sections. Right. I got 38,000 followers. Right. So I'm going to clip these specific sections. And I'm basically going to say, because we've been giving. All been giving. The ask is to allow us to have a bigger impact. So I'm going to clip it and share it. And whatever, it only takes one person. You know, I always say that only takes one. I'm not interested in how many people engage. Only takes one person, right?
Absolutely.
So, Dean, I'm going to come to you next. Call to action. What do you mean?
I do just want to say before I go to my call to action, which is going to be very succinct to Kay. I love to partner with you on that project.
Great.
We've got an initiative called the Schools to Industry Pipeline.
Right.
Which is a public health approach of bringing all of the youth engagement practitioners, be they rites of passage, be they the child parent intervention, the student advocacy that goes into the schools together to create that wraparound care for the African Caribbean family. Absolutely. But the child is the beneficiary with an African lens. So that is a framework and an initiative. But you see, the imagery is very powerful because it's all about humanizing us. We are sectioned in schools and criminalized, essentially. So I definitely want to have a conversation.
Absolutely. Let's do that. I'm so excited about the prospect of that for sure.
And also, so for me personally, in terms of AdPack, I'd say to any of our professionals, visit the website and get in where you fit in. So it's adpack.net. There's a number of national initiatives we are seeking to create. The framework is fantastic. It's like a 10-inch member. If it doesn't get solid, it's no good to you. It's no good to her. It's just there. So with a framework that requires personnel. So adpack.net, the Schools to Industry Pipeline. For marketing, we've got We Matter campaign, and we also have a fully fledged registered political party in the We Matter Party. So you can go to the wematterparty.org, adpack.net. We take donations, we're seeking volunteers and delivery partners so that we can be as institutional as they are in the game of Tai Chi. And before you know it, we only need to create a ground of parity. I don't want equal opportunities. Me and you will never be equal. It's fine. Because when we're on a track, which is parity, I may supersede you. And that's also okay. So we want to create the self-determined ground of parity, because with your magic tricks, we might get thrown off and emotional again, and we won't have our own institutions. It's time to get institutional because it'll outlive me, it'll outlive all of us, and it will benefit our children, our children's children. And I will leave it tied up with this. Who here can name the person who came up with the idea of the NHS or the team that actually created it? And who cares? Because we all utilize it because it's necessary. That's it. Institutions is the way to go.
Wicked. Wicked in our bed. Wicked in our bed. All right, Leanne, back to you now. Lord have mercy. What is your call to action? What do you mean?
My call to action is this. I'll be running it's called the Spotlight Academy for young Black girls across Europe between the ages of 18 to 24 to prepare them for professional life, to prepare them if they want to go into the corporate world, to understand the rules, the importance of building a network, personal branding. How do you get ahead? Like, what is it all about? How to manage their money, how to invest. So the plan is going to be to give these girls at the end a stipend, a package of 500 euros per girl to be able to set herself up in some way to start to work pack. I'm not sure what's in there yet, but it might be to help buy clothes, whatever. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for companies, people who can sponsor this, but I'm also looking for anybody who is willing to spend their time in helping these young Black women understand the lay of the land, so that when they go into the corporate world, they, even if they're the first one, they have the backing of 1,000 before them.
That's powerful.
Powerful.
And that's what I'm looking for.
Great.
Wicked. I love that. Well, listen, my ask is 2 things. 1, just keep listening. Like, you know, I'm always here. I'm moving to podcast. Yay! Yes, I'm listen, when I tell you I'm going all 4 corners, when I was doing some stuff for my company stuff, right? Because you got to go big or go home, as the saying goes, right? So my ambition by 2025 is to have unlocked over 1 million conversations about race and racism. So that's my we're at 50-something thousands now. So like collectively as my company and stuff. So just keep listening. And then secondly, like get me into your organizations.
Yes.
Honestly, because trust and believe, like luckily now, because this is not my first rodeo, so I've got people lined up that can testify to the impact. Get me in. Don't be sitting on the fence. Don't try and figure this out by yourself. Get me in. I promise you, best decision you'll make if you're serious about this. So, you know, and so like, and my Black colleagues, like whisper and get me in.
And that's a serious point. We have influence from the inside. So do it, because it's about your needs, your personal needs on your interests, and looking at your colleagues. And when they look at the periods of turnover for staff, it's very necessary to have these conversations.
Correct.
Retention, staff retention, because it costs money to hire staff again.
Of course.
Right.
Of course. So yeah. Right, well, it's time to finish. So I'll play a little tune out. I'm just gonna cut it. I'm just gonna go screen fade. Oh look, Dennis Brown. Come on, I gotta play a little Dennis Brown. Come on.
Always.
Got to let the dubs come.
It's so everyone in this matter of brown. So we have to start.
I'm ready to attack me some more.
We come. One of the respect for all the massive, and right now the item goes tuned into the World Immortal International Store Love. 28 years on the business and going strong in the 21st century. So right about now, I want to send enough respect for our crew. Let's speak up on ourselves, see the whole entire Store Love crew. Want to send enough respect reaching out to all the Pentos crew, all the Firehouse crew.
Thank you.
It's been great.
Chinese crew, all the crew from New York City, the way yourself, all the English crew there, all Canadian crew. All over the world, speak up on themselves, you understand? And them say, oh, God bless, no man curse. So in the meantime, enough respect, massive.